Good evening and welcome to another Lions University webinar. Tonight we are doing a doctorate webinar called Advanced Mentoring. PID Lee Fries is going to be our instructor tonight. We remind you that the webinar is being recorded, so if you cannot attend this webinar, you can attend it in a future time. Lion Lee, I'm going to turn the time over to you, and thank you for presenting tonight's webinar.
Thank you, Dina. Again, I'm Lion Lee Vries. My most recent role in Lions has been past international director, but one of the things I very much enjoy doing in Lions is teaching people about topics in Lions. And servant leadership is one of those topics that we have done in my multiple, and we are trying to get that information out to more and more Lions. So we'll start on this right now. This has been recorded in the same format as for the forum presentations. So that's why you're going to briefly see at least the recording and videotaping is not permitted, but that's only at the forum itself. I'd like to talk a little bit about what our objectives are that we'll be going through tonight. So first and foremost is to better understanding what is meant by mentoring. I presume that probably everyone has a slightly different definition to that, and we will give our definition of that tonight. To better understand what a mentor is, and maybe as importantly, what it is not. And then better understanding some differences between some concepts, which include mentoring, coaching, and sponsoring, and what the interrelationships are. There are also some situations here when mentoring, which we will define, and coaching, which we will also define, may be more or more not appropriate. And there's actually, we will illustrate, there'll be a continuum that you may go between those two methods. And then in the end, hopefully you will be able to identify your own member and explain why you chose that particular member or person as your mentor. So let's start with what is mentoring, and there's a couple of definitions we have here. But I think the one thing that is a little bit different here in mentoring is the long-term relationship. So again, you're trying to help a person meet their potential to benefit them, and it really is their choice, and we'll see some more of that as we go through. Another definition here is a protected relationship, which in learning and experimentation can occur. So it's not necessarily prescriptive in terms of just you go steps 1 through 5, that you're trying to bring out the positive aspects of your mentee in ways that may be unique to their personalities. So a couple of things in terms of what is a mentor then, if we understand what mentoring is. And Oprah Winfrey had given us this quote: "A mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope inside yourself." So really focused on the mentee in this particular case and helping them to become the best they can be. Also an experienced and trusted advisor, again, part of that long-term relationship that we talk about. And an experienced and trusted person. So again, this isn't just a short-term relationship, but you also develop that trust in that long-term relationship. So mentoring versus management, a little bit want to differentiate some things that mentoring isn't. And how many of you think that potentially this might be a good form of mentoring? This is what I actually call the Yell method of mentoring or management. And probably not real effective in any volunteer organization, including Lions. So let's go a little deeper into that. So mentorship is actually defined as casual versus formal. So basically you're following or go with the flow is part of the aspect in mentoring, the relationship between the mentor and the mentee. Another way to differentiate it is mentors guide, managers set targets. So when you're guiding, you're potentially trying to find where you want to go. Setting targets, you're basically goal setting at that point. Again, that interpersonal relationship, mentoring is personal. Management is more often used in a work environment. And a longer definition here is managing is the ability to oversee these timelines, projects, and goals. But mentoring is actually more of a developed relationship, trust, and caring about the person and helping them be the best of both. And again, the quote here is a good leader has a balance of those particular things. So let's talk a little bit about mentoring versus leadership. And a lot of these things aren't necessarily directly in competition with each other, but just in terms of the mentoring aspects in our definition here to try and focus us in on that. So again, leaders are focused more on that goals-based versus development type aspect that mentoring brings in. So again, one of the definitions. And leaders inspire high performance by motivating others to achieve objectives. So again, that objectives terms in and demonstrate accountability, where the mentors are actually looking to develop the individual that they're mentoring. And finally, just another way of defining this is mentoring is considered an essential leadership skill. So they aren't 100%, they are related, not 100% different. But again, you're trying to develop that individual to be the best that they can be, your mentee at that point. So let's talk a little bit about mentoring versus coaching, because these are a little bit more closely related, but yet can be different. So coaching involves feedback again, and you're looking to achieve a defined goal. So perhaps you want to run a marathon, or you want to do something specific. So basically, you set that target and you move toward it. Mentorship is more basically advising. You may be helping them to establish a goal in mentoring versus prescribing one. And another definition here is if individuals typically use a coach when they need targeted assistance to overcome specific challenges. So potentially you're having difficulty being able to finish that marathon or get over doing a half marathon, etc. But it's very, very targeted. And again, mentoring is providing the guidance in terms of here are some ideas or some things that you can do to achieve those things, and again become the best individual that you can in your own way. So another comparison here on coaching versus mentoring, and we've covered these a little bit already, but coaching focuses on performance, mentoring does not. And coaching is driving a relationship, or drives the relationship, where the mentee or the coach drives the relationship versus the mentee drives the relationship. Because again, you're developing something unique to the mentee. And coaching can be standardized. So you can potentially have a regimen that if you're trying to become physically fit in terms of here's a set of exercises that you can do, but mentoring might be personalized instead of handing them the particular recipe, if you will, that they develop it themselves. And just to reemphasize, this particular article talks about coaching. The summary is coaching is about performance. Mentoring is about growth of the individual or the mentee. So we mentioned sponsor earlier. Let's discuss a little bit about what the sponsor actually is and what their roles are. So a sponsor, I really like this in the underlined, I think items are the ones that really key it. A sponsor talks about you, a mentor talks to you, and a coach talks with you. So anyway, one way to think about coaching being a little bit different. And again, where a mentor is going to give you advice and feedback, but they go out of their way to help you determine where you want to go versus them giving you the targets to hit. And there's a continuum here that we talked about earlier. We're going to explore each one of these candidates a little bit. There's an aspect here that is similar if anyone has ever heard of conditional management or conditional leadership. Based upon the situation, that you may use these along this continuum from coaching to mentoring, etc. So let's look at the first one, involvement. So on the coaching side, again, you're going to look for particular techniques And in mentoring, you're going to try and find the strengths that help you achieve that particular item that you want to do versus looking for a particular problem, etc. On the coaching side, when it comes to relationships, a coach you may trust and feel comfortable getting advice, but the relationship on the mentoring side is more friendly or conversational and trust driven. That it's again back to that long-term relationship that's developed in mentoring. Coaching again is typically looking at something specific as a goal. Again, if you wanted to run that marathon or you want to become more physically fit, you want to be able to bench press some amount of weight, etc. And again, on the mentoring side, instead, you're building that relationship and helping guide the person versus setting a specific goal. When we talk about effect, what are we really looking for? On the mentoring side, we're trying to understand and help become a better mentor and and understanding the mentee. And again, on the coaching side, it may be more based upon that goal that you're trying to achieve that may or may not be a great fit for your mentee. Coaching is typically, as illustrated here, typically happens as it's needed, not necessarily a long-term relationship, as I've talked about several times in terms of the mentoring aspect, where you're really showing more caring about that person and developing that long-term relationship. And finally, what's the impact? So a lot of times coaching is reactive. You might not get a coach to help you finish that marathon until you realize that you've hit a wall, that you're having difficulty even maybe reaching a half marathon before running it. On the proactive side, you're going to try and help that mentee understand where their skills are, remove barriers, and encourage them to go out of their comfort zone in some cases to achieve the things that they want to do. So one of the things that we're going to, or some of the things that we're going to talk about are some we're going to call them golden rules for the particular mentee, etc. So, and these are things for you to think about as we go forward. So the first one we're going to talk about is the golden rule for leaders. And the golden rule for leaders is basically to find someone that is actually more talented, smarter, and dedicated, and as or more dedicated than you are. There's some things in terms of who you surround yourself for company that does it as well, that potentially you'll be challenged by someone that you respect and want to reach higher heights in terms of whatever it is you're trying to do, versus if you stay with other people that you may not challenge yourself. When it comes to clubs, and this is one that really we would like people to think about in terms of what protect your risk takers. And this has generated a lot of discussion in some of the sessions that we've done in terms of servant leadership, is why would you do that? So let's think about and lie in some situations where people maybe have taken a risk. It's potentially the new member coming in, and have they taken a risk at suggesting something? Because we've all had meetings, I'm certain, where people have said, gee, we tried that once and it didn't happen. And we need to basically say, well, yeah, we tried that once, but maybe there's some ways we can adjust that. So very important that we both understand what this means and can put it into action. So let's talk about for the golden rule for mentees. Humble yourself to hear the truth. There's an aspect of humble yourself to hear the truth that many of us are challenged to do, and it's the concept of active listening, is to truly listen to what someone is saying, versus our tendency tends to be listen to what, or listen so that you can respond to the individual. So active listening is a big part of this, and not have preconceived notions in terms of what potentially it is. That your mentee may have a totally different perspective than you do on things, than you do, that maybe you haven't given any thought to. and you need to think about in this particular aspect. So interesting comment in terms of people don't want to be associated with failure, and definitely true in terms of protect your risk takers, very much so in terms of risk takers. So the golden rule for mentors is you can't lead people beyond where you are. And I suspect that all of us have done that. For any of us that are parents, our children may have talents that perhaps that we don't. And we have to realize that and potentially find someone that can take them to that next step. Athletics is some of the examples I've given earlier where it's very, very easy that I have never run a marathon. I don't know that I ever would or ever could. It could be, but again, I can't mentor someone potentially on running a marathon because I haven't been there. And your mentee may have other experiences where you're going to need to bring someone in to assist in that mentoring aspect. So a couple of things for people to use as takeaways, and we can do this as discussion, or we can do this after the fact. But once we've went through this, how do you define mentoring? Has this changed the way that you think about mentoring? Have you thought about the relationship aspects versus the coaching, where basically you're just guiding someone through to a specific goal versus actually helping them find what they really would like to do? Another one is, who is your mentor and why were they chosen? I think it's important for us to have that realization of who that is and why. And in some cases, we may not have thought about this. Again, it's basically the relationship. And I would suspect that if you give a thought to mentoring in terms of the way that it is that mentoring is someone who is much closer to you. You would probably define as a friend or in some cases a colleague, but I think you would be have more of a tendency as a friend. And then other thoughts or insights on this. I really encourage everyone to provide any input, give some thought to some things that we were here. There's no necessarily one right way or wrong way to do mentoring as we go forward, but the key points to think about is basically that relationship base that we've set and to try and help people be the best that they can possibly be. And it's interesting, one of the comments is there are informal mentors that people have learned from, but it hasn't been formalized, and that's very true. Our mentors may be somebody that we don't think of in those particular in that particular light, but it is happening, and they are our mentor, and we look up to them and we look to them for advice, and they are there for us when we need them. So again, our objectives were to better understand what is meant by mentoring. Hopefully we've achieved that one and giving you in our definitions of this presentation what that is. To understand where mentoring or what mentoring truly is and what it isn't, some differences between leadership and coaching and mentoring. And again, we might be on that continuing on the difference between some cases we may coach, we may be helping someone even though we're their mentor to meet a specific goal. In other cases, we may be more on the mentoring side where we are actually helping people to find what it is that they want to do in that advising piece. And to understand situations when mentoring or coaching is needed. And again, it's to find that continuum. And that's something that, that potentially is going to happen over time. And it'll depend upon the relationship you have with people. And then identify your member and identify where they're why you chose those. So if you think about that and what's attracted you and what had drawn you to ask them or to be able to trust them and develop that relationship, I think is very important for all of us. So I hope that this has been helpful to all of you, our discussion on advanced mentoring, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Past International Director Lee. I cannot tell you how much I learned from this and thought a lot about who mentored me and who I'm mentoring now, and do I need to be a much better mentor? So thank you for this amazing presentation tonight. We hope that you will hit continue after watching this presentation and take the 10-question quiz that will give you credit for this seminar. Again, Lion Lee, thank you so much, and we hope you all have a really good night.
You're welcome.